All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things A1 ahead of the AMA Monster Energy 2025 Supercross season opener in Anaheim. Obviously, firstly, thank you everyone for listening and supporting the site. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for this one, In Fly Racing, who have excitingly jumped on board for this season. So obviously, we're joined by JT, but before we welcome him, we'd obviously like to give Fly Racing a massive shout out, and they aim to provide customers with the very best in off-road performance products. Led by the revolutionary Formula S smart helmet, Fly Racing continues to push innovation in safety to new levels. Never before has style and technology blended together so seamlessly as the 2025 Fly Racing lineup. For more info, check out flyracing.com or your local Western Power Sports deal. Give them a follow on socials and cheer on all their riders at the Super Motocross Series events across the whole calendar, which is just kicking off. So busy season ahead for you, JT. Welcome and thanks for taking the time to join us.
It is, and it's funny. I think everybody has a different perspective on a new season. I'm ready to go. I cannot wait, and that's with knowing what it comes with. Work during the week, writing, podcasting, all the TV stuff on the weekend, the flights, the hotels. Like it's a lot. Don't let anybody ever tell you that it's not a lot for people that are super embedded into this. But I love it. I truly live for it, and everybody needs a break. There's no question about that. Everybody needs some downtime and to regroup a little bit and live a normal life. But this is what I do. This is, a big part of who I am, which sounds super cliche, but how could it not be? I've been around this all my life. So after you kind of do the normal things and recharge a little bit, I'm ready. I'm ready to get back to all the things that I get to do. And I know how privileged I am to be in the roles that I'm in. And I am super excited for 2025. And it's funny, the reason I brought it up, that perspective, is I was talking to Steve Mathis, and he does a lot too. Travel, writing, his shows are a lot of work behind the scenes. And he's just like, oh man, he's dragging a little bit, So it's funny that just the different, everybody's going to go through the same thing, but the way you look at it is a little bit different for everybody. And that can change. That's a fluid situation throughout the season too. It's kind of the ups and downs of kind of where your mindset is. And are you tired? Are you dragging? Did you have a really tough travel weekend? Did you, all those things certainly play a part in that as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. Obviously, you've got you and Steve both on the topic. You've got very diverse skill sets. You can do a lot of things, podcast, writing, your day jobs, obviously, with fly racing. So I guess, all that sort of comes to a head at A1 and then you can sort of really maximize the skill set. And it's going to be a massive season for you ahead, isn't it, mate? Obviously, you mentioned on your industry seating podcast, which encourage all the fans to listen to that. 35 races for you this year across the globe, including the MXGPs, mate. So it's going to be a big one and it all starts here, doesn't it? So excitement is high for you, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. I understand that most people listening globally, they're not going to get the chance to go to A1. That's just reality for a lot of people. Now, I would say that if you are ever going to try to go to a motocross race around the world, I would say A1 is near the top. I would say any Motocross of Nations event, especially in Europe, is near the top, if not the top. And then I would say visiting a GP like Trentino, it's a different, you're not going to get all the hype and the excitement and all those things, but visually it's one of the most stunning races. It's one of the most stunning places, let alone races, that I've ever been to. So yeah, it's hard to not get excited and to be romantic about A1. It's just a very unique thing. And I saw someone post somewhere the other day, there's a YouTube comment or something, I guess consider the source on that, but they said something like, yeah, I went to Anaheim 1, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just like every other race. And I could not disagree more with that statement. Having gone to, I don't know how many races at this point. It has to be over 1,000 of, motocross, GP, supercrosses, whatever. The difference between Detroit and A1 cannot be measured, as far as everything that goes into it and around it and the feeling and the questions and There is no comparison. So I would just give a little recommendation. If you have a bucket list race to go to, A1 has to be on the list for consideration.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of that comment. Remember, you were saying that, I can't remember who it was, but there was a comment there saying that Motocross of Nations doesn't mean that much, and that sort of sparked you
Yeah,
as well,
yeah.
didn't it?
Oh gosh, I mean, I love Adam Enticknap. He's such a great person, for one, and his
Yeah.
personality is so unique. But yes, I very, very much do not agree with that statement. And you know what it is? I bet he's probably never been to one in Europe. I would bet money that he's never been to one in Europe. And I'll refer to a quote from Rocky Four, which is going to really date me and this quote, which was probably like 1984. But Apollo Creed tells Rocky, because Rocky doesn't understand why Apollo has to fight this Russian, and right, and they're in the height of the Cold War and all these things that, communist Russia was still the Soviet Union, all these things. And Apollo tells him, you may not understand it now, but you're going to understand when it's over. And I think that resonates for a race like the Motocross of Nations or Anaheim 1, to bring it full circle. You may not think it's a big deal, but when you're there and you feel what it is and you understand the dynamic being there, then you're going to get it. And it's hard to communicate. It's hard to really verbalize all of that without actually going and doing it. So if anybody takes anything away from this blabbering that I'm going to do for the next half an hour or so, get yourself to one of these marquee races around the world before, we're all going to die one day. And these are one of the things that you should experience.
Yeah, mate, well said, absolutely. And I guess A1 for you guys, how's it looking like? Obviously, so much preparation, planning, meetings. You obviously traveled all over, such as to Tomac's place to do the interviews, and that preview show was excellent. And I guess the broadcast team's immense. Obviously, you've got yourself as well with Jason Warrigan, and obviously Ricky, James, Lee Diffie, and obviously AC and Brayton will be on the race day live as well doing their thing. So the coverage is going to be enormous, mate. And obviously the Spanish broadcast is joined by the French broadcast. So they're making some really good moves, bringing more eyes to the sport. And everything's really on an upward trajectory ahead of the new one, I guess, for you personally and the team in the broadcast side of things.
Yeah, there's a lot happening for me personally, between fly racing here, watching the team prepare to get all of our athlete stuff ready. The addition of Cooper Webb, we have a lot of teams and a lot of riders that all need product, and the team has been working literally nonstop to make sure that we have everything there. Then you talk about the dealer and the hospitality side and our customer activation. All those things have to be organized and truck driven to California and set up. And there's just a million different details that have to be worked through on all the fronts for WPS and fly racing. And then the television side, yeah, it's a team effort, no doubt about it. But we also kind of look at it. Everybody has to do their own preparation individually and work on what they can bring to the show and what role they can play. And that's what I've been focusing on this year. Is, I think we have such a deep bench of talent when you look at the Race Day Live crew with Justin Brayton and Adam Cincerillo, and of course Katie and Haley and Lurch and all them on the more live action side. But on the real analysis side, having AC and Brayton there, they offer a ton, right? They've been there and done it, so they can talk big picture stuff and have it make sense and be able to translate it to the viewer. Then you think about the booth. James, Ricky, and Lee, all three of them in the booth for the first round. So you have two of the greatest riders we've ever seen. They know what the pressure of Anaheim 1 is. They're going to be able to talk to that and really explain what this feels like and all the pressure and expectation of months and months and months of work, that it doesn't culminate in one night, but for these riders, it feels like it does. That's the thing. Perception is reality. So if you feel like everything matters in one night, you're going to ride accordingly, and disassociating yourself from what it feels like versus what it should feel like is, I think, where the magic is for a lot of guys too. And then myself, so coming back to myself, I have this great perspective being down on, well, I would say perspective. My perspective may not be great, but I have an opportunity down on the floor to see things that other people can't. The guys in the booth can't go down on the racetrack. They can't walk out there in between intermissions and see how the lines are developing or see any of those things. They don't get to talk to the riders right after the heats and for lack of a better word, BS with these guys before and after, kind of in the downtime. So I want to do a better job in 25 of sharing my particular insight on those things. What is the track doing? How is the layout of the track going to dictate the racing? And to make it more specific for this particular weekend, if you look at the track map, it's incredibly tight, really tight, like lots of back and forth, really short straightaways, lots of 180s. So what does that mean? If you're just a viewer and okay, you like dirt bikes, or you don't know a lot about, even like, I'd say someone like my mom, she's been around the sport my entire life for sure, and before I was alive, but she's never ridden, she's never raced. So even someone who's been around it that much, how can I show her something about what the racing is going to entail that maybe she doesn't know? Forget about the casual viewer. They certainly don't know. But all those tight sections are going to disallow passing, because to pass, typically you need to get alongside the rider and then position yourself on the inside of them going into the next corner. That's the prototypical Supercross pass. Now, if the person on the outside forces the issue, or the person gets there late, that's where you see kind of the block pass variation come in. But 90% of your passing in Supercross is alongside a rhythm section or in the whoops. Rider gets on the inside, and they just have, like, they have the position. There's nothing on the person on the outside can do, so they relinquish the spot. The person on the inside goes along their way. That is Supercross 101. Super tight racetracks don't allow for that, because you get from one corner to the other. Well, there's no time to get alongside them. So what does that mean? That means passing is going to be difficult, and you're going to have to get wildly aggressive in the 180s. So there's going to be more block passing. Secondarily to that, it means the starts are going to be critically important. If you can't pass, you need to be up front without the pass, right? So you need to be, your first lap positioning is going to be it's always important, but even more important on a track that's difficult to pass on. So those nuances are things that I need to share with the viewer and do a better job of. So working through the offseason, practicing self-analysis, a little bit of self-loathing, I would say, is probably in there too. But how can I be better? How can I make the show better for me specifically? Because sure, can I get on there and talk about big picture Jett? What does Chase need to do big picture? Tomac's final season, how? Of course I can. And I will do those things. But the uniqueness of my position is not that. The uniqueness of my position is being down on the racetrack and seeing that dynamic unfold and evolve, and a fluid situation going on the racetrack. And then if I can say, hey, this is what it sets up for, watch for this, and then 20 minutes later, that happens, I feel like I'm doing my job. I've set the viewer up to expect something to happen, and then boom, it happens. And most likely it will, because the racetrack is aiming for that to happen. It's almost forcing it into almost into a tunnel. Like the racetrack is forcing the racing to be a certain way by its design. So anyway, I know this podcast isn't about me, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the racetrack. And I've been looking at how is it going to shape up? What is the racing for Anaheim going to look like, and why? That's what I think you're going to see this weekend. So as we talk about these riders, I can almost tell you the guys that have the best chance of doing well are the good starters. If you cannot get off the line, and second to that, you can't pass very well, I'll just give you a name. Chase Sexton better have it together this weekend. He better have it together, because his starts last year were terrible, and then he took way too long to pass people in Supercross. He was way too patient, and I like that about him. He doesn't force passes, and you could say the same about Eli Tomac. If he doesn't show up with the Yamaha version of Eli Tomac, where he gets good starts, gets a bad start, and then he has a propensity to kind of get stuck back there. We've seen it time and time again. This racetrack will penalize that much more than other racetracks will. And then the complete opposite end of that, you have Jett Lawrence, who does all the other things. He gets the starts, he can force passes if he needs to, but most of the time, he's so good on the first lap that he's going to set himself up for success even more than he normally would.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely love the insight, mate. And obviously, you got so much knowledge and insight to share, but the way you deliver it and execute it as well brings it into the lounge rooms of people so they can actually understand it. And yeah, mate, it's great stuff the way you articulate the comments because obviously you hear a lot about in various sports. Some people have all the knowledge in the world, but actually delivering it to people in a digestible way is a challenge. That's like a lot of professional players sometimes don't make great coaches because they expect such elite output from their players and they get frustrated that they can't do it to the level they can do it, mate. So it's really cool seeing you obviously making progress and continuing just to work hard to be as good as possible. But yeah, you made some excellent points there on the Lawrence brothers, Sexton, Tomac. But yeah, if they can get those starts, the Lawrence brothers especially, like they've been doing on the Honda, it's been impressive. But with the new bike, obviously there's been some sort of much documented struggles. Jett kind of has got the capability to ride around it. Hunter's a bit more methodical, but it'd be really cool to see how that goes. And how do you think the fans will receive them after, Jett sort of and Hunter both sort of with the comments, how they're embracing the hate and Jett especially, how he wants to sort of destroy the competition and with that whole Deegan Oz Open thing, there's a little bit of an edge there and some beef brewing nicely. So how do you think that little subplot will play out?
Yeah, it's gonna be that's the $1 million question, right? Because Jett, I don't want to phrase it that way. I was gonna say he didn't do himself any favors, but the way that the off season went down, there are a lot of people that are angry and disenfranchised with the Lawrence brother camp. And whether that's fair or not, whether that's warranted or not, that's not for me to decide. I personally kind of don't care. They've always been super nice to me. I've always gotten along with them and Dazzy. I also get along with Hayden Deegan and Brian Deegan really well. So I kind of stay out of it. It's not my fight to be in. But there are going to be people that are going to boo him this weekend. There will be those. What I don't know is it going to be the majority or not? That is where the question really comes in. And when Jett rides out and when Dazzy and Hunter and all the Jett fans and family and friends and team and everybody, they're all watching and listening in the stadium or on TV, is the predominant sound booing? I don't know. And that's really all I want to see as far as opening ceremonies from Jett is the reception of him. Now, it doesn't mean that Jett deserves it. I'm just more curious as like a social experience or experiment about where do we come down on this as far as Jett Lawrence goes. So that's going to be, yeah, it's an unanswerable question. There will be boos. I will go on record saying that. I just don't know if the boos will outweigh the cheers because there's going to be a lot of cheers too. And to be quite honest, I'll be one of the guys cheering him because the kid is an absolute phenom, and I don't even think we've seen the best of him yet.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool. I wonder if that sort of fan animosity spills into obviously those Lawrence experiences. They're obviously still on the table, and you obviously, we've spoken about it. You're a pioneer with one of those, and so it'll be interesting to see how that's received as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think there's a lot of it kind of falls into the same old category as there are more questions for A1 than there are answers. There probably always has, and there probably always will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously a man that we've sort of touched on quite a lot, Cooper Webb. We're really fascinating to see how he goes in the fly gear, mate. I'm sure you've got something that'll be looking really fresh for sure, mate. But he's the mentality monster and he won't really mind too much if A1 doesn't go, getting on the podium. He can just manage the season so well. He doesn't necessarily always be there at the start, but he'll be there at the end. And gone are the days of, I guess, riding him off coming in, mate. But he's just such an adaptable rider. He can defend, he can attack. He's got so many skills. He's got the racecraft. He can make passes happen on difficult surfaces, and he's just a master of making other riders uncomfortable, isn't he, mate? He's just always applying the pressure. If it's not direct pressure, he creates that perceived pressure. He's got the mind games, and yeah, he probably doesn't get enough credit for his actual exceptional riding in his own right and the outright speed and talent and quality and the way he makes up time on tracks where you just don't think it's possible and gains traction and stays low in the turns and does all those really cool traits that is way easier said than done. So your take on Cooper Webb heading in, mate, it's exciting.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys you can't count out. I think everybody tries to prematurely bury him every single season. Maybe last year was the one where you couldn't because he surprised everyone so much at A1. But he's just a gamer, and it's such a cliche term, but he is. It doesn't matter how he looks in practice. It doesn't matter what's going on with the race or him. He's going to find a way in the night show, and he continues to get better and better and figure out the track and figure out how these little cheat codes throughout the day, as the track's evolving, he kind of evolves with it. And I think the slower the track is and the more the whoops kind of deteriorate, if all those things fall into his plan. So, I think he's the one thing he is not going to want to do is just have a really bad finish at A1, right? If he shows decent speed and he feels good, and even if it's like a fifth, I don't think he'll panic, like you're saying. Like, he's not going to leave there really angry. What he doesn't want to do is make a big mistake, have a first turn crash, have a crash of his own accord. Those things can't happen. You can't give up 15 points the first round. He knows that. And also, I think another thing that would really frustrate him is if he was just nowhere near the pace. And I don't mean he just can't quite find the top gear and he ends up fourth. I don't, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if he gets like eighth or ninth and it's a really distant eighth or ninth and he's getting beaten by guys he shouldn't, and he can mark like whoever's at the front and they're checking out on him lap after lap. That's something he's not going to want to do, because that's something that really doesn't typically happen to him. Like, he can usually figure out the pace by the main event, and those types of things linger in your head leaving an A1. It's like, oh man, did I do enough? Did I do the wrong things? Are we nowhere near where we thought we were going to need to be? So I think he's going to be fine in the end. It's just, you just want to basically avoid disaster at the first one. And he's been in this game long enough that he knows that all too well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And obviously, from talking to other riders and industry people, how much do you think he creates that intimidation factor and fear factor on the line for his competitors? Obviously, we've seen it in the past, but he's an awesome bloke off the track. But once he's on the track, he's prepared to do what it takes to win, and he's always up for the battle. So I guess your take on just the way the perceived pressure and the intimidation he can create just through his actions.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an intimidation thing so much as more as it is guys get nervous when he's within striking distance in the last 5 minutes or 8 minutes, let's say. Again, I'm going to reference myself, which I don't like doing, but I always used to tell guys that the first few laps, first half of the race was not my strength. I didn't have a lot of sprint speed, and it took me a while to get going. I needed to kind of get warmed up. But if you could see me anywhere in your periphery in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 laps to go, you were in big trouble. And as far as like losing a position to me anyway, and I see that in Cooper Webb, is that he is the master of late racecraft. And also he just kind of continues to get better as the race goes on. He figures out the track. As I mentioned before, as the track gets worse, he seems to get a little bit better. So it's just one of those things where I think he is one of those guys where everybody knows that if Cooper Webb's second, you want to build a gap on him. And that, I think, to lead into another point, I was so impressed with Jett last year, because races like Birmingham, where Webb was sitting there 2.5 seconds down, the whole race, Jett never cracked. I would go so far as to say that Jett so far has really been the only rider, and I guess you could say Arlington, Jett crashed, and maybe if you were looking for an angle, you could say Jett cracked when Webb was trying to apply pressure. I don't really see it that way, because Webb really wasn't closing on him. But Jett so far has been the only one where more than once he's been able to kind of say, yeah, I see you back there. It's 5 laps to go, but you can't do anything about it. So it's almost like the clash of the Titans in those things, is where each of their strengths are going head to head. Jett is the most comfortable person I've ever seen with a 2-second lead in my life. And Webb is the most capable person I've ever seen with a 2-second deficit in the final few laps. So it's kind of a fascinating race within a race for hopefully a lot of the rounds in 2025 as well.
Yeah, that's terrific insight. And obviously, Tomac, if you've gone and visited, it's going to be really cool to see how he goes, obviously, for what's slated as his last season. And obviously, he's looking so good in WSX, which he can use as a little bit of a pre-season base building, getting some important gate drops. But, he's been working hard and he's been gathering some really good momentum. And the fans are definitely going to be on his side as well with the MXON stuff as well, how he came up for the team there and, put in a really great shift. And I wonder how much he uses that scoop tire, mate, because he loves it off the starts to, feel confident using it, and he's just an animal, that he'll be up for the challenge. And like when he said to you in that interview, he wouldn't be out there if he didn't think he could win. So it'll be really cool to see how he goes. And like we've touched on, enjoy these more experienced riders while we can, because they're not going to be around for too much longer.
Yeah, Tomac's going to be it's going to be fun to watch, and we have to remember this is the last time we're going to see him in this capacity where he's all in all season. He's chasing a championship. Now, will he race WSX and do? Sure, he will, because he makes so much money at those. Why wouldn't he? But we're witnessing the wind down of an era for a legend, and there's really no other way to put it. And I do think he's back. Is he 2023 form? I don't know, but he's close. He might be better. I don't know, but he is that guy again right now. The 2025 version coming in is the same guy that we saw exit in Denver with a torn Achilles. Like he's back to that level. And the unanswerable question, and the one that, if you had to come up with tell me where does the rubber meet the road for Eli Tomac? Is that version, the 2023/2025, is that version of Eli Tomac good enough to beat Jett Lawrence's best? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. My deep down heart of hearts tells me it's not. And I understand the gravity of that statement, but I've watched a lot. I've watched, look at Motocross of Nations, look at what Jett was able to do to everybody, look just time and time and time again. And it's just a natural evolution of the sport. That's why records are continuously broken, is somebody comes up with new techniques and technology's gotten better and they just do it better than anybody else has ever done it. So I don't mean it as a slight. I just think Eli's going to have to be damn near perfect. And maybe Jett makes it easy on these guys and has an injury or gets disenchanted with something or other. I don't know. But I'm going to assume everybody's going to bring their best. And that's Eli Tomac will win a race in 25. I do believe that. But he's going to have to be, I say, perfect. And when I say perfect, I don't mean win every race. It's kind of a misnomer. What I mean is he can't have these really strange rides where he goes out and he gets 9th or 12th. And there's really no reason for it. He's going to say that the setup was wrong or he had arm pump but unfortunately, when you're in the position that Eli Tomac's in and you have that type of expectation and you're battling for a championship, you can't do that. Like it's too many points to give up when nothing really happened other than you got tight, because things are going to happen. There's going to be a first turn crash, or you're going to have something, a real crash, or something legitimately is going to go wrong. Not just, I wasn't quite feeling it. Like those can't happen when you're up against Jett and Webb and a resurgent Sexton and all these things. You just can't. That cannot happen. So 2 questions really. Is Tomac's best good enough? And I can't wait to find out that answer. And then the B version of that is also, you can't have the really bad nights that we've seen almost every season for years. Even the years he won the title, we saw races where you're just like, And I would even say the year he won the title in 2022, you could go to Tampa and go back and watch that race. He was phenomenal that season, dominated A1, crashed and still won the race. And we went to Tampa, and I'm watching him going, what the hell is he doing out there? Like, seriously, what is he doing? So those are the type of nights that I'm talking about. And you can still win the championship getting a 5th, but it's just an example of when he's in his best form, he still has a propensity to have those off nights.
Yeah, it's well said. He needs to be there every weekend, because you can't afford too many bad ones with these really tough competitors he has. And I guess Jett, like we were saying, on his bad nights, he can still pretty much win or get a podium at worst. And just that damage limitation for Tomac will be key, and just keeping it consistent for as long as possible. And hopefully, we see multiple wins and he's right in the fight till the end. And you mentioned Sexton there, resurgent Sexton, year 2 on the KTM, outdoor champ. Obviously had some really big bike issues going into last year, and obviously that wasn't sort of working at all for him, and that was probably playing on his mind, which he's admitted as well. But he's hopefully can get back to that really raw pace Obviously, the KTM situation, like we've discussed in the background, probably doesn't help their riders, but I'm sure they can switch that off. But there's no doubting the speed, the strength, the skill, the fitness of Sexton. It's really interesting to see how comfortable he is and how his mindset is heading in, mate. And obviously, those starts are so key, like you said, because if he gets them, he can find those limits and push up with Jett. It's just so important for him to hit the ground running at A1, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, with Sexton, I'm in just a show me position. I don't have preconceived notions of how this is going to go, but I'm going to need him to show me that he's fixed the things that held him back in 2024. I'm going to need him to show me that he can get consistently good starts when he could not do that last year, just couldn't figure it out all season long, even into Vegas, could not get there. So I'm going to need him to show me that they've sorted out the clutch, the engine, his starting technique, whatever it is, they've got that fixed. And then the other thing is I'm going to need to see that raw speed back. I'm going to need to see him back to the guy that he was in 2023, where he's qualifying quickest. And I know he's up against Jett now for fastest qualifier. So if you tell me that he's fastest qualifier a few times and he was second an awful lot, I'll take that. I will take that as an improvement, because you don't have to be the best guy. But what I saw last year was a guy that went from qualifying the fastest 13 out of 17 times in 2023, and he went into 2024, and I saw a lot of 4s, 6s, 8s. That's not going to work. That is not going to cut it when you're talking about a raw speed factor for Chase Sexton. And not necessarily because of gate pick or anything like that. It's because of what it does to Chase's psyche. He is a rider that he's very subject to the emotions of the day. And I will contrast him to a guy like Webb or Roxon. Chad Reed was the same. They looked at the lap times and then kind of tossed it aside. Like, oh, okay, 8th, whatever. Oh, first, cool. 11th, okay. They didn't care. I'm just telling you, I've seen it time and time again. They simply didn't care. And it's one thing to say you don't care, but it's another thing to ride like you don't care. And that's how those guys did it. When the race, it came time to go racing and the gate dropped, they couldn't tell you if they qualified first or 40th. They simply didn't matter anymore. Chase Sexton's on the other side of that coin, where it permeates his confidence and all the things that happen throughout the night. He's still thinking about, oh, I'm slow today, And it's easy for me to say, hey, dude, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't think about those things. But it's in his head. So he just has to understand that these things are affecting him and fight it off as much as he can. Or the other side of that, hey, just qualify really fast, and then it works the other way. Then you get all the benefit of it without the drawback. So those two things in a nutshell, if you said, if I had a 20-second window, which I happen to on Saturdays, to talk about what's it going to mean for Chase Sexton this year, you got to fix the starts and you got to show us that you have the raw speed again. If you go those two things, there's a really, really strong chance that he's in the title fight come Salt Lake City.
Yeah, that's a great analysis of Sexton's situation and just the things that he needs to do to be a success and what he needs to be on top of. And another guy that's looking for a massive year, obviously Jason Anderson, 5th in the championship last year in Supercross. He looks pumped for a big season, obviously contract year, and he wants to stay in the game, and preferably with Cowie as well, mate. He's still got plenty to prove. He's not done yet. And I guess, he looks pretty determined, fully motivated, got Prado as a teammate, over 2 years since that last win. He likes testing himself with those riding partners. So Prado will be giving him a bit of rejuvenation. He's had that stint out at Club MX as well. So he likes to sort of just see where he's at. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes with Prado as a teammate, mate, because he's looking like he's pretty motivated for a big year.
Yeah, it's a huge year for him, to be quite honest. Speaking to him, he doesn't want this to be his last year. He wants a new contract with Kawasaki. He wants to stay there. He feels like that's home for him. But if you're Kawasaki, how do you look at this situation? I think they like him overall, but I think he's 31 or going to be 31, something like that. So are you going to sign up a rider for 2 more years at a significant amount of money? And if you do so, it also kind of means you're out of the Hayden Deegan sweepstakes. I think in portion, you're going to fill that second 450 spot. And also you're investing into an older rider, which is OEMs typically don't like doing that. So what does that mean for Jason Anderson? You have to go out and ride so damn well that you force their hand. That's it. Like in a nutshell, you have to leave them no choice. You have to win races. You have to be championship relevant. I'm not saying you got to win another title. I'm just saying throughout the course of the season, when people are talking about the weekend, you have to be on the tip of their tongue because you are up there every single time. And then Kawasaki's going to be like, well, we kind of have to have him because Prado's, in my opinion, not going to be ready for that step in Supercross. They don't know if they can get Hayden Deegan anyway, and they need a guy that can win races. So it's pretty clear. I think it's one of the most clear-cut situations. He's either going to step up and deliver and get another contract, or he's going to have another year, and it's going to be a really tough ask from Cowie. If they decided to keep him, it would be, in my opinion, at a really low number. Which is, I could be way wrong, but that's just kind of how I see it. You know, it's all about who has the leverage. In every situation in life, someone has leverage and they're going to wield it. It's just Jason Anderson hoping that he has it at the end of this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one to see if he can get back that 2022 form where he was absolutely dynamic. And obviously, you touched on Prado there. You know, it's going to be an interesting one for him. Lots of things to get used to. Obviously, he's just done it all in MXGP and MX2, really. He's ready for the challenge, but it's going to take a bit of time to adjust to that Supercross schedule, the sheer amount of races back to back, and just the whole framework in a new country and just all the little details that, like you mentioned on your podcast, you know, you're getting your diet right on race days, having naps, these kind of different things. It'll take time to see what works for him. And I guess just starting off in the top tens is going to be his sort of, you know, approach, I would say, even though for someone that's a champ like him, shifting that mindset and expectations must be quite difficult. But, you know, not many dudes go straight into 450 Supercross. It's a huge step against these career veterans. But he's a very confident, sure of himself person, Prado, and he'll back himself to be a success, won't he?
Yeah, it's going to be, you know, you want to say it's a learning process. I think last year was too. But I just hope that he and I think the team is smart enough. I just hope that he can manage expectations and not get incredibly frustrated if he doesn't take this gigantic step right away. Because I think if he stays healthy and he continues to progress, it's going to get a little easier throughout the middle of the season and later into Supercross. It always does. And he hasn't lived that kind of evolvement of the way the series goes. People get hurt, people drop out, people say, I'm going to go get ready for motocross. Like all these things happen. A1's going to be the toughest field you face. Always is, always will be. Everybody's focused on being healthy for A1. And then slowly but surely, we just see the injury bug strike here and there, and it gets a little easier and a little easier. Plus, he's going to get better along the way too. So those two things are going to work together to help his results. The one thing he can't do is get frustrated and override the situation, take too many chances, and he be the one that exits because of injury. Not only because it's going to stunt his growth in Supercross, but it's going to really hurt him where it matters, and that's preparation for pro motocross. So, you know, I think measured expectations is the name of the game. You know, try to be in the top 10 all the time. Try to put yourself in winning situations, which what I mean by that is starting up front, which he is, we know he is one of the best ever at. And if he does those things, you know what happens when you put yourself in good situations? Good things tend to happen. And that's kind of how I view his season. If he remains opportunistic, he's going to find himself in a spot where the track's pretty easy. He gets a great start and he's sitting there in like third or fourth at halfway. And he's going to be like, oh, I can do this. Like I can do it tonight. Like this is my shot. I can be top 5. I can get on the podium. So that's just kind of how I see it. There will also be nights where he doesn't get the start or the track just doesn't work for him. And he's sitting there in 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and he's really pissed off. And he's just got to swallow that, which I'm sure is really hard for a 2-time MXGP champion to do. Just swallow the pride, get over it, finish the race, and move on. It's okay. Like it's going to happen. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. So if he's looking at it going, well, yeah, but I'm not going to, you're going to face that. He did it he faced it last year. There were nights where he was like, I raced like 5 races and he was like 11th or 12th in one of them. It's going to happen. You just have to be willing to accept that and understand the situation. It happens to everybody. It's okay. And there's going to be another race in, 6.5 days from that moment.
Yeah, well said. There's going to be some sort of tough moments, and it'll just be all about keep learning, making progress. And when those 15ths and whatever come, it's just going to be part of the process, mate. So, yeah, really cool stuff there. And obviously, onto the Baker's factory guys, Barsha, AP, and Mookie. It's going to be really interesting to see how they go. Obviously, love to get your take on yesterday. I spoke to Jackson Richardson, the guy you probably know, the Aussie former racer, and he was saying that 201 to 1 was Mookie's odds to win A1. So that's probably a little bit high for someone so good and experienced. But yeah, your take on how they're coming in, and Barsha and moving to the Baker's factory looks refreshed, and AP's ready for another win. And you never know, Mookie was looking good in Paris and he wants to have a really good year as well. So those guys will be pretty good to follow too.
Yeah, all those guys, they're capable. It's just they're kind of the dark horse guys for the weekend. It's Justin Cooper has lots of speed. Justin Barcia's won Anaheim 4 times. Malcolm Stewart, he's been a little quiet as of late, but yeah, he's had a solid offseason. So, they have the benefit of coming in with no pressure. No one's talking about them. There's no real expectation. They're not going to have to do 12 million interviews and all those things. So Aaron Plessinger, I would even kind of say, is in the same boat. They have the benefit of lack of pressure. I don't know what better way to phrase that, but that might allow them to ride freely on Saturday where everybody else is so damn nervous that they're not able to show their best stuff. And I remember talking to AP last year in opening ceremonies, and he was so calm and funny, and everybody else, you just see like they had like lasers coming out of their eyes because they were so focused, and they're so nervous, and it's palpable like that. When I talk about A1 and the atmosphere, that plays a role into it. The energy in that building, and I'm not a big like aura and energies and all that. I'm not, but you could feel the pressure of the day amongst all these riders and the people. There's just a lot that goes into A1. I don't think those guys are necessarily going to be there. They're going to be kind of more like, yeah, man, let's do this. Like, let's go shock the world type thing. So I think there is some freedom in that, and maybe we get a surprise from one of those guys. And I would even say you could throw in Jason Anderson into that mix as well. Anderson was second last year at A1. He is a guy that could also surprise because no one's really talking about him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be good. And obviously, we haven't mentioned Roxon yet. He'll probably be up there as a contender for a main event win, at least one for sure. And any other guys you'd like to touch on with, like, obviously, Justin Cooper, Christian Craig won't be racing, Ferrandis, Nichols, Hill, Bloss, Savachi could be really good. He's had a great Australian and World Supercross season. Oldenburg, obviously, the beater with Bloss as well. It's going to be pretty tough to get into that top 10, isn't it?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Roxon and circle back to Hunter. Both of them are going to be in the mix. It's just for Roxon, if you told me Roxon won A1, I would shoulder shrug. And that sounds crazy, but he's a guy that doesn't feel pressure in these situations. When I talked a minute ago about riders being able to ride freely and not tight and not arm pump and not just freaking out during the A1 main event, Roxon's that guy. We've seen him do it. We've seen him get out front. We've seen him win A1 multiple times. He can get out and check out before, everybody else is trying to figure things out and like looking around, and on a track like this, you could see people roughing each other up on the first couple laps. And meanwhile, Roxon is riding off into the sunset. That can happen. Make no mistake, that can happen this weekend. I don't think it will, but it can. It is. If it's not on your bingo card, make sure it is somewhere, because that is a real possibility. Now, Hunter, I think, is a little different. I think Hunter can be in the top 5. He could be on the podium. I really think the most critical aspect for Hunter is getting the start. He's got to get himself in a good position on that first lap. And if he finds himself up front early, he's going to feed off of that confirmation. They're like, yeah, it's just the same as last year. Everything's happening the way it's supposed to be. I'm good to go. If he finds himself in 12th on the first lap, he's going to be like, crap, I'm struggling again. It's A1 again. How am I going to get through all these guys? And he'll methodically move up to, 8th or 9th or whatever, because he's really good and really fit. But I truly think if you are looking for one guy, that first lap positioning is incredibly critical to their overall result. I think Hunter might be that guy. And then all the other guys you talked about, Bloss, and a lot of those guys, it's just getting a solid A1, getting the main event. and then put in 20 plus one solidly and see where you stack up. That's it. Like, no one's talking about them for podiums or any of that. You just want to get started on the right foot. So when you leave A1 and you're driving back to your house or your hotel or whatever, you kind of have just a good feeling. You just kind of like, okay, exhale. And Savatgy's in that boat too. Like, he'll qualify, obviously, but like for Savatgy, I think a top 10 would be a great place to start. You just want to leave there like sighing relief, not going, crap, we're nowhere near where we thought we should be. And I've been in both spots. I've been in both of those positions, and I can tell you one is much more fun than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get out of there with one healthy and two with that bit of positive momentum to kick off the season for sure. And before we let you go, mate, a little bit of 250 chat. Obviously, Hayden Deegan's the showpiece, mate, the showman. He loves it. He'll be up for the occasion, but he probably won't have it all his own way for sure with guys like Shimoda, Faulkner, Jordan Smith. Those two on the tri are really excellent, experienced Supercross racers. Obviously, Juju, he'll be looking for more after a positive SMX as well. Ryder D, Shock, Reynolds, Moseman, and the young Kiwi, Cole Davies too, mate. Obviously, straight into the West. Obviously, the Star Crew are really impressed with what he's doing, a testament to his skill and speed at the moment to be thrown in there, because obviously Futures was what it was supposed to be after he won it last year from all reports, and to have him in there is pretty awesome, mate. So the 250s will be box office too, won't they?
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think Deegan's announcement that he was racing West was really the headline of the offseason for 250s. And I shouldn't say I knew, but I was very confident that Kitchen was racing West, so that wasn't really a shock. But it's going to be fun. Those two have been jawing at each other all off season. They don't hate each other, but there's no love lost, and they both want to beat each other. And Deegan's gonna do what he does. He's gonna continue to run his mouth. He's gonna poke. If he goes out and wins A1, those guys are going to hear about it. They're probably going to hear about it at the press conference. If he wins A1, they're definitely going to hear about it on the podium. And it fuels the fire. It adds more to the saga that is Hayden Deegan. And the one thing I like, right? My personality is not similar to Hayden's, where I don't like being kind of boasting, or I don't like bragging. I don't like talking trash to people. I have never done that. I don't like it. He does. That is who he is. And you don't have to like it. The only thing I would say about it is, as long as you back it up, I'm not going to complain about it, because he's giving everybody all the motivation in the world to go out and hit him, beat him, however you decide you want to go after him for the things he said. He's giving you all the reasons in the world to do it. But if they can't do it, and he can point you in the face and say, yeah, I'm going to beat you, and go out and beat you anyway, what can you say? What can you do? You can't do anything about it. So again, it's not my style. I would not go about it that way. But the only thing I ask is, if you're going to go about it that way, then back it up. And I'll be damned if he's not backing it up.
Yeah, it's going to be so good to see how he goes. Yeah, it's always entertainment plus with him, mate. Really exciting. And before we let you go, mate, give us a couple of picks and predictions for each class, and just some final thoughts, what you're looking forward to most. And obviously a busy weekend for Fly 2. So many riders representing all the incredible gear you make. So just give us a couple of those, mate.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward on the first lap. We're going to know a lot. I think the track kind of sets up that way. If Deegan gets out front, good luck to everybody else. If Jett gets out front, good luck. What I would love to see is Deegan start like fifth and have all the top guys at the front. And let's really see. Let's see who's got what. I want to see these guys duke it out. And 450, kind of the same thing. I just want to see all the good guys get a good start and mix it up a little bit. I think that Jett he's kind of a primetime performer. He really shows up when the pressure's on, and everybody was like, yeah, but A1, his first Supercross, and look what he did. He went out and rode almost a flawless race. And you could say, well, he didn't win by a lot, but that's kind of what he does. He doesn't very often win by a lot. He really embraces doing just enough. Prediction game, I typically love being in the prediction game. I think I have a nose for kind of what's going to happen. But A1, I always am very cautious with that, because it's such a weird race. I usually have far more questions than I have answers. And that's a tough spot to be for an analyst, because you're supposed to be able to tell everybody kind of what's happening, what's going to happen, and those things. But A1 is just such a unique thing that I think you have to be a little careful about thinking you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. We can't wait. Definitely. Thank you again for taking the time to come on the podcast, mate. Obviously, we'll get you on throughout the season. It's going to be really cool to follow. And obviously, thank you to Fly Racing, who continue to push innovation in safety to new levels. Never before has style and technology blended together so seamlessly as the 2025 Fly Racing lineup. For more info, check out flyracing.com, your local Western Power Sports dealer, and follow them on socials. And make sure to cheer on all their riders in the SMX racing throughout the year. So thanks again, JT. Been a ripper chat, mate, and all the best for the weekend. It should be a good one.
Thanks, mate. Good to talk to you.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.